is LBC. From Global, leading Britain's conversation, The Nigel Farage Show.
Mr. Nigel Farage.
Well, thank you, Donald, and good evening, everybody. It is nearly the end of term in Westminster, and what a year it's been. A new Prime Minister took over a year ago. She called a general election to increase her strength. Sadly, she got rather weaker through it from her perspective. But now's a very good time to reflect on this year of Theresa May's premiership and how she's doing. And I thought, who better to give me a proper analysis of how term has gone than the Latin master himself, Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Conservative MP for North East Somerset. Jacob, good evening and welcome.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
To the show. Tell me, just how strong and stable is Mrs May's government?
It's all right. I think in politics things are rarely either as good or as bad as they seem. And that in March, Mrs May was getting enormously favourable ratings, and then that didn't translate into the landslide that people had begun to expect. But she got the highest vote share since Margaret Thatcher in 1983, and more actual physical votes than Tony Blair in 1997. She's still the Prime Minister. She commands a effective majority government with the Democratic Unionists. The cabinet is calming down, and we're going away.
Is it?
Yes,
Is it
I think
really?
it is. I think it is.
But we've seen, Jacob, within a week of the Queen's speech being voted on, we've seen the Foreign Secretary and the Chancellor of the Exchequer publicly disagreeing on the 1% pay cap for public workers.
Well, I think there's been differences of nuance rather than fundamental disagreement. I think you may say the elastic of collective responsibility has stretched, but it hasn't been broken. That around the pay cap, there are some areas where people have done better than others, that there have been pay increments, there have been grade increments, and that has meant that people haven't just been receiving the 1% pay, and that there is some flexibility within that. And the Chancellor is quite rightly emphasising the general point that we have to live within our means. So I think because it was a febrile atmosphere, minor disagreements got blown into an unwinding of cabinet government, and I think that was an overstatement.
And certainly we're not living within our means, are we? Because we're still borrowing £50 billion plus every single year. But perhaps the most important thing, and all of this stuff matters, but Brexit, and you were a Brexiteer, and indeed we shared platforms during that campaign. Brexit is the most fundamental political change that we've seen for a very long time in this country. The whole object of the election was to give Mrs May a stronger hand in Brussels with the renegotiation. With the best will in the world, the election has weakened her hand, surely.
I don't think it's weakened her hand in Brussels. I think it's weakened the ability to get legislation through the House of Commons. But Brussels is used to dealing with coalition governments. Very few European governments are not coalitions, and therefore it deals with the Prime Minister of any individual country as the Prime Minister as long as that is the case. And therefore I think the negotiation carries on as normal, and our position is extremely strong. If you take the customs union, our leaving the customs union is a risk exclusively for continental Europe, because we protect their goods, we don't protect our goods by and large, and therefore they have a lot to lose if there is a difficult departure. And we have only a marginal amount to gain from an orderly departure. So our position is pretty strong. We should emphasise that. I think we have been so negative about our own position, and we've assumed that when the EU says it wants to negotiate in a particular way, or the order of negotiations, that's holy writ, and we must just bow down and obey.
But you could argue that we are, Jacob, because actually, if you look to what happened this week, Monsieur Barnier seemed to be very much in charge. He set the terms upon which we negotiate, which have to be agreed before we even discuss a free trade deal, and we're going along with that.
Well, but we're not. That, as you may have noticed, we've already discussed trade to some degree, because trade is essential to Ireland. You can't discuss Ireland without discussing trade, and Ireland has come in the first round. And they're expecting us to set out what we intend to give them in terms of money. And we've said, no, you prove it. Show us what we actually owe you. Come up with some figures. And that's very difficult for them, because our strict legal obligations, as you know very well, are nil.
Article 50 makes it clear that once we've left, all obligations cease.
That's absolutely right. So we have a very strong negotiating position in legal terms. Whether we want to give them some money to achieve favourable terms in other ways is a negotiating matter, but the legal starting point is incredibly strong.
Now, I understand that completely, and yet, look at what Monsieur Barnier has done in the course of the last couple of weeks. He had Jeremy Corbyn to see him, he had Nicola Sturgeon to see him, he had Carwyn Jones, the First Minister of Wales, to see him. So at the same time, we're being told we're not allowed to negotiate directly with any member state government. We're not allowed to negotiate trade with any other part of the world. And yet here he is negotiating with other party leaders. I mean, do you think Monsieur Barnier is playing with a straight bat?
Well, I very much doubt he's a cricketer. If he is, he plays French cricket, which is a rather mutated version of the real thing. But it's very interesting that The Times has a piece today by a senior German politician saying that he thinks Mr. Barnier wants to punish us and that this is really bad news for the EU and that that's beginning to show splits. And although we may not formally be allowed to negotiate with other member states, it's quite interesting where the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge have just been, how well they've been received, that our relations with other member states beyond the two power blocks of France and Germany are in many ways pretty good, and I'm sure the Foreign Office is working on improving those and ensuring that we sow some seeds of doubt, and I think this contribution, as I said in today's Times, is extremely interesting and important.
There is an argument here for economic logic, and you're quite right, and I agree with you, that if you go to Bavaria, for argument's sake, it is very much in their interests to have a simple tariff-free deal because they sell an awful lot of motor cars that are made there, and we could argue the same for the regions of Bordeaux or Burgundy or Champagne. And again, they need. I think they sell us about 20 million bottles of champagne every single year. So there are very strong arguments here, but, and here it seems to me, is the really big divide, perhaps within the cabinet, within your own party, and certainly an angle that is being used by Mr. Blair and Vince Cable and others. If Barnier and Juncker decide to hell with French wine producers, Belgian chocolate makers, German car manufacturers, we're going to put what we see as the political interests of the Union ahead of economic logic. If we get to a stage where they're asking us for ridiculous sums of money, they're demanding the European Court still has a say, is no deal better than a bad deal?
No deal must be better than a bad deal. That if you take the logic of your argument, say they wanted £1 trillion from us and said that we must remain within the European Court for a 25-year transition period, no deal where we didn't have to pay them a penny would be better than a bad deal. That is obviously true. And they need us. The great advantage of our leaving is that we cease to protect inefficient continental industries. If you just take solar panels, the reason solar power is so expensive and heavily subsidised in this country is because we put a huge tariff on photovoltaic cells from China to protect an inefficient German industry. We can make energy cheaper, lower subsidies. We can do the same for food, clothing and footwear once we're out of the customs union. We ought to be focusing on the really positive aspects of leaving the EU, which benefit most of all the poorest in society, who spend a bigger percentage of their budget on food, clothing, footwear and energy.
Well, I shall look forward to your party and your cabinet being united and being positive in the autumn, although I'm rather sceptical as to whether they will be. Now, Jacob, on this show, we've seen over the course of the last few weeks, particularly, Mogg mania, or is it Mogg Mentum? I mean, I've got a tweet here, Moggy, 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 in, and there is this wave of popularity coming, this now trendy old Etonium that people are rallying to, and yet, maybe that's not the case inside Westminster, where I see that this week you didn't manage to win the chairmanship of the Treasury's Select Committee. So are you more popular amongst the public than you are in Parliament?
Well, I lost the chairmanship of the Treasury Select Committee to a highly qualified former cabinet minister who will do an extremely good job. Popularity in politics is very much here today and gone tomorrow, as you know. What I think matters, and I might begin to sound like Tony Benn in this, is the issues and not the personalities. And that what is important, and here I very much agree with you, is that we ensure we get the best deal over Brexit and that we genuinely leave the European Union and that there isn't some dodgy establishment stitch-up to keep us in to the great cost of the British people. And anything I can do to contribute to that, I want to do.
Well, it's interesting because Ian Dale, whose show is on before me, has been to Downing Street today and interviewed the Prime Minister. And one of the issues that came up was that of Jacob Rees-Mogg. And perhaps you'd like to listen, Jacob, to how that little interview went.
Rakesh Shah from Rotherhithe wants to know, when will you give Jacob Rees-Mogg a cabinet job?
Jacob is a great colleague, and he makes a huge contribution in the House of Commons. And it's always worth listening to Jacob's contributions in the House of Commons because he's a great history buff, and you learn an awful lot when you listen to him.
That was the most nervous, prolonged laugh I've heard her utter since she was asked in the election campaign whether she thought Nigel Farage should go to the House of Lords. I mean, Jacob, they don't want you, do they? In high command of the Tory party, do not want you in a senior position.
The Prime Minister has just been asked that question and has given her answer. And I'm a huge admirer of the Prime Minister's. I want her to stay in office. I back her very strongly. We need stability. We need a period of calm. We've had some very exciting summers over the last few years, and I think we need a calmer, cooler summer, regardless of the temperature outside.
The Prime Minister, as you know, is not a particularly fit or well woman, and she has a condition that she has to deal with. If she was to go at some point in the next couple of years for health reasons or whatever it may be, are there any circumstances in which you could consider having a tilt at the top job?
If you look at the history of who becomes leader of the party or of the country, of a party in government, it has never in its whole history been a backbench MP.
No, but it's never been Trump in America, and it's never been Brexit, and we're living in very different times.
I think it would be vanity on my part to think in these terms. I want to support the government in getting the best deal on Brexit and getting us out of the European Union and in its other ambitions. I want Mrs May to carry on doing it. I have very few personal ambitions. That being the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset was my life's ambition. That I am now going on Test Match Special at Headingley just is the icing on the cake
I've
of
done
a
it
life.
myself, but I agree.
You know what I mean.
But Jacob, it's all well and good you saying that, but actually in the course of the last couple of weeks, we're seeing a bit of a Rees-Mogg rebrand, aren't we? Because you're now on Twitter, you're now on Instagram. I mean, this is a very 21st century Jacob Rees-Mogg now, isn't it?
Well, I don't think it's much of a rebrand. My first entry on Twitter was in Latin, it has to be said. One of the most obvious quotations that I use the dictionary of quotations greatly, and the one I used comes under A for anonymous, so you don't even have to get very far into the book to find it.
Jacob, I think some people will be listening and saying, actually, there's a bit more ambition, perhaps, with Jacob politically, but on a personal level. And people are interested. You've just had your wife, you've had your sixth child, who you've named Sixtus, which certainly attracted some attention. Can I ask you, how's the nappy changing going?
Nanny does it brilliantly.
Right, OK. So you're on Twitter, you're on Instagram, but you're not exactly modern man, are you?
I've made no pretence to be modern man. At all, ever.
So,
I'm probably as modern as you are, then.
That may be true. Have you ever changed the nappy, Jacob?
No, I haven't.
Right.
I don't think Nanny would approve, to be perfectly honest. I don't think she'd think I'd do it properly. And bear in mind that this is the nanny who's worked for my family for, in September, 52 years, so she knows a thing or two about doing it properly.
And what's it like? Suddenly, you've gone from being a political figure, you're suddenly becoming a bit of a cult figure. I get huge feedback about you on this programme, and some people love you, and others, of course, don't, and that's how it goes. How are you coping with fame?
Oh, it's all great fun. Politics is enjoyable as well as serious. I've always thought one should take pleasure in politics and enjoy the bits of it that are amusing. That Private Eye had a wonderful selection of names that I should give to my next child, and I think of those Moggy McMogface was my favourite. That there are amusing parts of politics, and one shouldn't be too po-faced about it.
No, I agree with that. And Jacob, summer holidays, are you going abroad? Are you staying in the UK?
No, Somerset.
Somerset.
Where else could one wish to be?
Very good. Well, Jacob, thank you. And as I say, it was the Latin Master's end-of-term report. Jacob, very upbeat about the Prime Minister and the government. He's certainly very loyal, if nothing else. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. The time is 7:18.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast with Matt Fry.
The European Union would try and make an example of Britain. Is that the attitude of Michel Barnier, the chief negotiator, or Guy Verhofstadt? They will say no. But there is one senior German politician, Hans-Olaf Henkel, who's written a piece in the Times today where he says, actually, no, they do want to make an example of Britain. Well, Hans-Olaf Henkel is on the line now.
I think Verhofstadt feels partly responsible for Brexit. He, of course, wants no other country to go the same way.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast with Matt Fry every weekday morning from 7, only on LBC.
Travel Pack. Have the right flight at the right price. In fact, we'll price match most worldwide flights if you find one cheaper elsewhere at the time of booking. So, if you need to book a flight, remember the Travel Pack price match. Call Travel Pack on 0208 903 9999. You won't find a better price for your flight. Travel Pack 0208 903 9999. ATOL protected. Excludes low-cost operators. Competitors must be ATOL licensed. Conditions apply.
I used to work in a call centre. Every weekend, instead of being with my man, lost in conversation, I was with customers who'd lost their internet connection. But now I drive with Uber, so I only work weekends when I feel like it.
Oh, the football's on this weekend.
Like this weekend.
Work or not, at the touch of a button. Find out more at uber.com/driveuk. Uber. Where to?
When you hear a PPI commercial like this, you think, I wonder if I ever did have PPI. And maybe I should claim with the deadline being announced. And then you think, oh, but I'm not sure where my paperwork is. So you end up doing nothing. Well, here's the easiest thing in the world to do. Just text the word EASY to 60777 and the claims guys will conduct a free search to discover if you ever had PPI. And then you can decide to pursue the claim yourself or get the claims guys to do it for you. Text EASY to 60777 now.
The claims guys.
Stub out your last cigarette and celebrate with a holiday in the Caribbean. London South Bank University is looking for smokers to take part in an exciting new research project in the capital. You'll be paid to take part, and along with the chance to become a non-smoker, there's a Caribbean holiday and more to be won. So hurry, search online for LSBU Stop Smoking Study. That's LSBU Stop Smoking Study. Over 18s only, T's and C's apply.
Westway, there's no other way.
Smarter, sleeker and better than ever. The UK's favourite crossover SUV has had a serious makeover. Experience the new Nissan Qashqai at Westway. Be quick and get a £1,500 finance deposit contribution with representative 3.99% APR finance subject to status. Come and test drive the ultimate urban crossover for yourself. To find your nearest Westway, you know what to do.
Google Westway Nissan today.
Divorce. It threatens the things you've worked hard for in more ways than you can imagine. Your home, savings, pension, and most of all, your relationship with your children. Don't let divorce cost you any more than it has to. Cordell & Cordell is dedicated to helping men in matters relating to divorce. Call now on 0330 60 60 161 or visit cordellcordell.co.uk. Office in central London. A partner men can count on.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Well, it's the last day of term as Parliament breaks for the summer recess, and certainly the last 3 summers have been busy with fears of a Scottish breakaway and of domination of the referendum in the last 2 summers, and a lot of people, I think, hoping for a much quieter political late July and August. And we just got Jacob Rees-Mogg in, as you might have heard, to give his assessment of how the government is doing. And Jacob Rees-Mogg, loyal to his leader, loyal to his party, and Jacob thinks the Prime Minister is doing fine. He thinks that the Cabinet is now pretty much united, and that Brexit is on course. And I do admire his loyalty, but I have to say, can't really agree with him at all, because it seems to me that the Cabinet are actually fighting like ferrets in a sack. And we have the Chancellor contradicting the Foreign Secretary, Boris Johnson, and vice versa. But I wonder how you think, at the end of term, how you assess this government is doing. James in Bristol, is Mrs May, does she get an A star from you or not?
Well, I have to say, I was very pleased with her when she first started. I thought we might even be in for another Margaret Thatcher.
Did you?
I'm a big fan of.
Why?
But I think, obviously, she seemed to be tough. I mean, if you remember that first question time appearance she made, and she leant across that dispatch box and said, "Remind him of anybody." You know, she really ripped Corbyn to shreds, but I'm afraid that as the campaign went on, I think she stuck to her script a little bit too much. And things obviously didn't go the way we planned.
But now, I mean, does she really, you know, and we're going to have this break from frontline politics for a period of time, does she really have the authority to be our Prime Minister, taking us into the most momentous political change of our time, namely Brexit?
Well, I think certainly we didn't get the number of seats we wanted, but she's got 50 odd more than Corbyn, so I think she's definitely got the authority over him. But I think that the likelihood is that before the next election comes around, we're going to need a new leader. And I think Jacob Rees-Mogg is the man for us.
Do you really? I mean, tell me. You know, I asked him the question. He said, "Oh, well, of course, history says but history wouldn't have predicted Brexit. History would never have predicted Donald J. Trump. So we are living in different changed circumstances." What, James? You know, and I've been getting this for the last 10 days or so. Mogg mania, Mogmentum on this show, and that was the reason for getting him in, really, because so many of the listeners are curious. What are the qualities that you think Rees-Mogg has got that means he could do it?
Well, I think he would be up against the most anti-British potential Prime Minister that we've ever had. And I think to have a patriot like Jacob Rees-Mogg would be a fantastic asset. I mean, if you think of the number of UKIP voters that went back to Labour this time round, despite the way that Corbyn had spoken about us in terms of conflict, backed our enemies at every opportunity. I think a man who loves his country, I think a man who is pro-Brexit, especially given the number of people like Philip Hammond that are trying to mess around in the cabinet. I think that will be a very positive thing.
James,
but I think my one concern I had was that perhaps there would be a little bit of inverted snobbery there. But I saw a video of him online where he went up to South Shields, and he worked really, really well with people across the class spectrum, as it were. I think he related really, really well to ordinary people, a bit like yourself.
Well, James, thank you for your comments. James, who thinks that May will be replaced at some point in time, but he's reasonably happy with the direction. Rowan, who's calling from Beccles in Suffolk, what is your rating? What grade would you give the Prime Minister for her performance?
Hi, Nigel. It's an honour to speak to you. At the moment, well, first of all, when Theresa May first took over as leader of the Conservative Party, I would have probably given her a 7 or 8 out of 10. I supported Andrea Leadsom in the leadership race. I'm a member of the Conservative Party. I would have personally voted for her. At the moment, I think she's absolutely useless. She's lost all authority. She's everything she says, there's no sincerity in what she says. It's all scripted. I think she needs to be replaced swiftly with someone like Jacob Rees-Mogg as my first choice, or David Davis secondly. But really, I don't think there's anyone in that Tory party who has the backbone to introduce some hardline neoliberal economic policies to sort this country's finances out, because we have got massive, huge debt what needs to be dealt with harshly.
So grades A to F or marks out of 10, Rowan?
For who, sorry?
For Theresa May. What does she get?
A 5.
She's now a 5. 5 out of 10 she gets. OK. Well, that's given that you said she's useless, that's quite a high mark, Rowan. Thank you very much indeed. Charlotte from the Forest of Dean. End of term report. How is Mrs May doing?
Well, I think I'd give her about 5 out of 10.
Right.
I think the election was a bit of a Horlicks, to say the least.
Right.
Well, it was. I mean, they started off looking strong, and then you had all the issues with the, with the pensions, and she basically alienated an awful lot of people over the care home issue. And then, of course, you've got Jeremy Corbyn offering tons and tons of free stuff because that raised his popularity. And I think she's got a bit of a fight on, not only within her own party, but trying to combat the sort of popularity that Corbyn has got with the young. That's going to be pretty difficult for her.
So does she stay on, Charlotte, in your view?
I don't think... I don't think she's got the... I sometimes think she's just not got enough oomph.
So who, Charlotte? Who? Let's say there's a bloodless coup between now and the Tory party conference, and somebody's anointed to take on the Tory party crown. Very difficult, given how split they are. You know, and Jacob was being very loyal about his own party, but come on, you know, they're at each other's throats, this lot. I mean, who takes over, Charlotte?
Well, that's the issue. Who does take over?
Well,
I'm
asking you.
Well, no, that's what I mean. But a lot of people are saying it's David Davis, but you know, I'm not sure whether he's not better served doing Brexit. But I think, you know, however loyal Jacob Rees-Mogg is, and I'm a great admirer of his, I think that really they need somebody who's strong and direct. And I think in a way it would be nice if Jacob Rees-Mogg could throw his hat in the ring, and I think a lot of people would be really happy with that. But at the end of the day, that's his decision, and he's the one that would have to really sort of weigh that up.
Okay, but you would think, I mean, Charlotte, you would see him as a potential contender.
I would see him as a potential contender only if he's happy to do so. And from the sounds of it, he's quite happy where he is with what he's doing at the moment. And
I'm not so sure.
We need more people like Jacob Rees-Mogg, because we're so underrepresented by people who are very pro-Brexit and are actually speaking for us. As Brexiters, as people who love the country and want it to be great and want to stick it to Europe, we do. We want Europe sorted. We want
Charlotte, you're not alone in considering Jacob to be a contender. I thank you for your call. Rees-Mogg is a gentleman, an intellectual, and our next PM, I get on Twitter. Wasn't Corbyn a backbencher? I get on text. Well, that's absolutely right. Rees-Mogg, all of the qualities we need in a PM without the ego, spin and rhetoric, says Andrew in Leicester. A lot of you were very impressed with that 15 minutes we had with Jacob Rees-Mogg at the top of the show. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 7:30 and time for the news with Moira Alderson.
Demonstrators have gathered in West London this evening as local council officials discuss the Grenfell Tower fire. The Kensington and Chelsea Authority is holding its first full public meeting since last month's disaster, in which at least 80 people died. In an exclusive interview with LBC, Theresa May says the BBC needs to work harder to reduce the gender pay gap. The broadcaster's been forced by the government to publish the salaries of its highest earners, and they've shown big differences. People born between 1970 and 78 are going to have to work an extra year before they can claim the state pension. The government now intends to increase the pension age to 68 from 2037, 7 years earlier than previously planned. LBC weather, thundery showers moving northeastwards across the country tonight, staying warm and humid in the southeast, an overnight low of 15 degrees.
LBC Travel, good evening, I'm Andy Lake. Well, starting off in East London, expect delays on Romford Road near the Stratford Centre, where the traffic lights are not working, which may affect you heading to the London Stadium for the Para-Athletics. In South London, the South Circular in Catford is queuing both ways towards Torridon Road as temporary lights are up for repairs to a water main. Into Leicestershire, the M1 is queuing northbound between junctions 21 and 21A after an accident earlier. All lanes are back open now, though. And in Lancashire, the major disruption on the M6 continues in both directions between junction 34 for Lancaster and 36 for Kirkby Lonsdale. Multiple lanes are blocked at various points along that stretch because of flooding on the road following the torrential rain. Make sure you are careful driving around there tonight. Onto the rails quickly, and Greater Anglia and Stansted Express are both delayed, and some services are cancelled as well in and out of Liverpool Street via Bethnal Green. For more real-time traffic updates, go to lbc.co.uk.
This is LBC.
We've been thinking about Lucy. And how she's not very happy that her phone is on its way to Preston without her. And with it 86 selfies, 4 cat videos, that guy's phone number and her banking app. But at least she isn't worried about someone stealing her money. That's because at NatWest we've already thought about the left phone on the train scenario. It's why we never store your bank details on your mobile. NatWest. We are what we do.
App available to customers with online banking and a UK number.
Moving house, nightmare. I need a plasterer, plumber, electrician, builder, painter, locksmith, gardener, and somebody to move my valuables, the drinks trolley. Relax, relax. It's Trust a Trader. They have all the tradespeople you can think of, reputable and reviewed, so you always get a job well done. Well done me, I say, for getting it all sorted. I shall reward myself with a cheeky tipple from the trolley. Chin chin, pass me the gin. Visit trustatrader.com.
I used to be a security guard. Work nights. Instead of being at home with the kids watching TV, I was always at work with Big Barry watching CCTV. But now I drive with Uber. I don't have to work on social hours if I don't want to, and I can do and watch whatever I want.
Daddy, can I watch Doggy Detective?
Brilliant.
Work or not, at the touch of a button. Find out more at uber.com/driveuk. Uber, where to?
You could spend days driving round lots of car dealers to find your next car, or you could sort it in an afternoon at Big Motoring World. With up to 2,000 pre-owned BMWs, Mercedes, Audis and VWs in stock, you'll save time to put in some hard hours at the gym or just chill on the sofa with a controller. Big Motoring World, just minutes from the M25. See bigmotoringworld.co.uk.
On a travel pack tailor-made holiday, you get to see the very best of the world. Tour the famous Route 66, the spectacular Canadian Rockies. Experience the magic and history of India, the wilds of Africa, or the exotic Far East. Start your journey with Travel Pack. For amazing prices on your tailor-made holiday of a lifetime, call Travel Pack today on 0208 903 9999 or visit travelpack.com. Atoll Protected.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
Parliament is breaking up for its summer holes, and I'm asking you to give an end-of-term report. How do you think Mrs May is doing? And we had the Latin master, Jacob Rees-Mogg, in earlier. Lots of you saying nice things about him, but Gordon says, Mogg, another double-barrelled Eton Trinity educated millionaire. We need someone who will listen and represent the country. So it is not a wall of unanimity for Jacob Rees-Mogg, although I have to say, in the last couple of weeks, Mogmentum does actually appear to be happening. And across the other side of the water, another day, another row about Donald Trump. Guess what? Mr. Trump went to the G20. As you know, he had the official meeting with Vladimir Putin and, of course, with many others. And it emerged overnight that he'd had a second meeting with Vladimir Putin, and this is seen to be some terrible, desperate, conspiratorial thing that he's done and that he should have declared. I wonder whether, actually, given the mood in America, the country is governable at all if the president, frankly, can't do a thing without having to declare it. And I also look at the fact that one of the things Trump has done in the last couple of months is he's started travelling. You know, we saw the big speech in Riyadh where he said to the big Muslim leaders of the world, drive out of your places of worship those who wish all of us harm. We saw the big speech in Warsaw. And I thought what was more remarkable than anything was, I mean, he and Emmanuel Macron could not be more polar opposites in terms of virtually everything from attitudes towards global warming, towards the European project, terrorism, etc. And yet, what a huge success for both parties' perspective it was. Trump going to Paris. They were talking about 100 years ago, American soldiers engaging in the First World War. And yet in this country, we've got people like the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, saying he's not welcome. We've got many on the left threatening large-scale protests if he comes. And Britain's biggest and strongest ally in the world, with a president who, whether you like him or hate him, is half British and is pro this country, and we're told Trump won't be coming here until sometime in the middle of next year. We're missing the boat. We must be crazy. Now, I'm getting some stick here. Linda says to me on Facebook, Nigel, just leave May alone. Stop slagging off Mrs May. You will never get Brexit if you bring Corbyn to power. It's not me that's slagging off Mrs May. It's you, the callers, and the texters, and the tweeters. We just had a Tory party member on before the break saying that she was useless. And I want to see Brexit happen absolutely more than anybody. But it's only going to happen if we have a leader who is able to command unity in that cabinet. And all the while we have a cabinet who are fighting like ferrets in a sack, who are contradicting each other, not just on the 1% pay cap for the public sector, but actually on the course of Brexit, on the potential length of transitional arrangements. All the while we have that, it is very difficult for David Davis to go to Brussels and, frankly, be taken seriously by Monsieur Barnier and the others. So I'd be perfectly happy if Mrs May starts sacking a few people, gets some discipline, and has a cabinet that's united. If she doesn't do that, I think they'll get rid of her before the Tory party conference. That's my view. Mark, in Rugby, what is your end-of-term score for Mrs May as Prime Minister?
Well, extremely poor. I would struggle to give her above 2, to be honest with you.
Right.
She delayed on, obviously, activating Brexit.
Yes.
Which should have never taken so long.
That took 9 months, Mark, just to remind people. 9 months to trigger Article 50, yeah.
Exactly, and then everything looked as if we were on course. Everything seemed to settle down. Then she had this grand plan to obviously call for a general election, which she'd said numerous times that she wouldn't do, but that was only due to the election fraud and the fear of losing too many MPs. And she went from strong and stable to weak and feeble. A Tory manifesto was an absolute joke. It showed the true meaning of Brexit in a Tory eyes, which isn't going to be the Brexit that we want. And, half of the cabinet, over half of the cabinet, I believe, are Remainers as well.
You sound pretty hacked off, Mark, with the whole shooting match.
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, you've got a great patriot like Jacob Rees-Mogg, who doesn't get the credit that he deserves, works very hard. Everyone loves Jacob. Obviously I'm a dedicated UKIP member, but, the man is brilliant. He's one of the best politicians of our time, including, obviously, yourself. And, he should be rewarded a position. He should have got the last position.
And yet, Mark, when Ian Dale, and it was a very good question that Dale asked, when Ian Dale asked the Prime Minister, whether Jacob would get put into the cabinet, it was a very long, nervous laugh, wasn't it?
It was, and she's threatened by him, and that's the truth of it. I mean, you've got Philip Hammond at the moment, who doesn't deserve his position. He's extremely weak. He's nowhere near strong enough to be the Chancellor, and that would be the perfect position for Jacob to fit into.
Right.
I believe.
Right.
I
So
think he should be sacked with immediate effect.
So we've got a bin Hammond and lob in Jacob. Is that right, Mark?
Totally.
All right. And it's only 2 out of 10 for Mrs May, yeah?
Yeah. She might take notice. She normally takes notice of what you say. She may not admit
I don't know about that. But, Mark, thank you for your call. Ray says, I'd seriously consider voting Conservative if Mr Rees-Mogg was leader. I never thought those words would leave my mouth. Jacob said the government was all right. I don't think it can be taken as blind loyalty. He said what he thinks, says Lee from Dulwich. Well, I said, Lee, he was being loyal. And I think if Jacob, being as loyal as he is, says the government is all right, I don't think it really is somehow. I think it's maybe in a little bit more trouble, perhaps, than that. Who cares if he's an old Etonian? As a working-class man, I love how he's unapologetically posh and very charming, says Darcy Lloyd on Twitter. Nigel, from the sound of it, I think we should get Nanny to run the country and take on Europe. Right, thank you. George in Bromley. Come on, end of term report. How's she doing?
Oh, good evening, Nigel.
Good evening.
It's been very mixed. She's taken the country forward with Brexit, which I'm obviously very happy about. She's kept what came out in the referendum. She's kept it to heart. She's taken us through it. However, I really think we need a Brexiteer as PM to do it right. With this whole conflict going on with the cabinet, Amber Rudd teaming up with Philip Hammond going for the softest Brexit. Boris Johnson forcing Theresa May out for the hardest Brexit. And she hasn't taken a position on it yet, and it's too late to do it.
So, are you saying, George, that you doubt her sincerity in all of this?
Not necessarily sincerity, but it's I I think it's more the fact that she doesn't know what she wants for the electorate.
I have to say, George, I'd rather agree with that, because there were 4 times when Jeremy Paxman, in that interview in the election, 4 times Paxman said to her, as a committed, whether she was committed or not, but as a Remainer, are you now in favour of Brexit? And 4 times she said, we will carry out the will of the people. And I have to say, like you, George, I was wholly unconvinced by that. And she's leading a cabinet that is increasingly split on Brexit, on pay caps, on many other issues. George, if before the conference she decides to walk or she's removed, is there anyone you can see, George, that would not only believe in Brexit and do the job as you want and I want, but that would be able to bring that party together? Is it possible?
Nigel, who else but Jacob Rees-Mogg?
Right.
He's absolutely fantastic. He's got a progressive stance on Brexit. He's got character. He's able to bring the electorate together. I'm 17 years old and I'm absolutely adore him.
Do you? Yeah.
Yeah, he's fantastic in every way.
Is he the antidote to Corbyn mania amongst your age group?
Exactly. I mean, I'm an editor of a meme page called Middle Class Memes for Rees-Moggian Teens. And
I'm so pleased you told me that.
You'll absolutely love it. You look at the stuff on there. You read the comments. Everybody loves him. The young love him. Mrs May has no character, nor does David Davis has more character than her, but certainly not as much as Jacob does. So,
is personality important, George, to you? I mean, you're 17. You're clearly politically active. You're about to start voting at the next election. Are you looking for big personalities?
I personally, somewhat. Naturally, I find it more appealing. But for those that aren't into, aren't so much politically active, it's all about character. They're not going to read through the manifestos, are they?
No, of course they're not.
People, they're going to see what they like, and with Corbyn putting across such a he's one of the many, as he calls it, but he's really not, to be honest.
But he did it very cleverly, George.
He did, and Mrs May didn't play her cards right at all.
So, marks out of 10, George, for Mrs May?
Mark out of 10, I'll give her a 6.
A 6? Compared to what you said, that's quite generous. George from Bromley, 17-year-old, thank you very much indeed for your call. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, here on LBC. It's 7:45.
Coming up at 8 on LBC, Clive Bull.
Millions of workers will have to work an extra year as the government brings forward a rise in the pension age. Is the answer to pensions to make people work for longer and longer?
Clive Bull on LBC.
Hi, I'm Michael Owen and I know what it's like to be injured. If you've been injured and it's not your fault, you need to speak to Gowing Law. Text WIN to 80800 and Gowing Law will do the rest.
Thanks, Michael. If you've been injured on the road or at work, Gowing Law could help you win thousands in compensation. We can tell you instantly what you might be owed. Find out right now and text WIN to 80800.
So win with Gowing. Text WIN to 80800.
Are you confused about PPI? At PPI Hotline, we want to give you the facts. There is absolutely every reason to check you had PPI. Even if you think you never have, we can help you find out, as you could be owed thousands. And now there's a deadline. We just need the name of the bank you've had loans or credit cards with, and we'll check for free. So find out now if you're owed by texting WIN to 82222.
PPI Hotline. Text WIN to 82222.
Summer's here. Ice cream, barbecues and sundowners. Typical English days out. And the perfect time of year to replace that old boiler. At Swale Heating, our expert engineers can install a brand new A-rated Worcester Bosch boiler, which comes with a warranty of up to 10 years and a year's free cover for the whole central heating system. Subject to survey, conditions apply. So you and your family won't be left in the cold this winter. Visit swaleheating.com for a quote today. Rely on us to keep you warm.
TfL and the Mayor of London are growing the capital's fleet of electric and hybrid buses. Their significantly lower emissions are helping to bring cleaner air to London. Great news for, well, basically anything that breathes when you think about it. For more information, search TfL Improvements. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Can you take that ball outside before you break something, please?
Wasn't me!
Ah, families. At least Tesco Mobile gives you something to smile about. With our family perks, you can choose from a range of monthly rewards to suit everyone, such as money off your bill, extra data or club card points, for you and each family member you add. Smile, you're on Tesco Mobile.
2 or more subscriptions up to a limit of 5 on same account. Perks given once a month and vary with spend. Club card points in month after earned. Exclusions, T's and C's apply. Visit tescomobile.com/terms.
Punching the air, Sally jumps out of her Renault Traffic van. Winning her second gardening contract feels even better than the first. Topiary has a new champion. Renault Pro Plus vans are trusted as the logistics partner to the Renault Sport Formula One team, delivering vital components day in, day out. See how the award-winning Renault Pro Plus range can power your team with reliability and aftercare service you can count on. Visit one of our Renault Pro Plus specialist dealers to find out more.
Leading Britain's conversation, The Nigel Farage Show. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
It's the end of term and MPs are all off for what they hope this year will be a genuinely long summer holiday, because the last few years have been dominated by Scottish separation, by referendums on our membership of the European Union, and they're all hoping for a quiet summer. The person above all who's hoping for a really quiet summer is Mrs May, who will go off on a walking holiday and I suspect not come back with a new idea, like holding a general election as she did after the Easter break. But I'm asking you to assess her. How is she getting on? How's she doing? How's the government doing? And if indeed she does go, either of her own accord or there's some sort of coup between now and the Tory Party conference, who perhaps would be best to replace her? Tim in Chesterfield, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I found up saying, I don't know if I'm living in a parallel universe or something, but how can people vote for a former Etonian who talks about his nanny looking after his children, who talks about, oh, for crying out loud, who talks about, he's so far removed from the British public. I mean, how can the public say that he reflects them?
Well, I guess, Tim, and I completely understand what you're saying. And I was teasing him a little bit in the interview, so, are you 21st century modern man and all the rest of it. But I think what it is, Tim, I think what people are finding attractive is that he's not pretending to be something other than he is. When sort of David Cameron, as an old Etonian, started appearing without wearing a tie and trying to look cool and get down with the kids, it looked false, it looked fake. Jacob, but the last time I saw Jacob in this studio was a late-night show that Sheila and Ian were doing for one of the elections, and Jacob was here in dinner jacket and full black tie. It's kind of the way he is, Tim, and I do understand that people will say, well, how's he a man of the people? But maybe what we're looking for is political figures who we think at least are genuine.
Can I just say, this whole situation, you've talked about nobody expected Donald Trump to be the United States president.
Yes.
Can I just say, the whole situation here, we've got a lot of Britain is broken. We talk about our prisons, the situation about our prisons is broken. A lot about the police, the health service, a lot. We're in a situation in which we thought Britain could never stoop to. And the trouble is, Britain needs to have a hard, painful look at ourselves, and we need to ask ourselves, are we really as great as we think we are? And secondly, we need people like the former Joe Cox, who are genuinely concerned about people, to actually not be concerned about herself or her ego. She was genuinely concerned about people. We need somebody who will genuinely be interested in...
Do you see anybody in this Conservative administration or party that could fulfil that role?
Oh, I struggle because I don't lean that way. I don't vote for those guys, but
Because, I mean, that's the question. I mean, you know, they are in power. Yeah, they've got to rely on 10 DUPers on issues like the budget or whatever, but they are in power, Tim, and whether you voted for them or not, you know, they are tasked with taking us through the biggest political change of your or my lifetime. So it is actually quite important, isn't it, that the person leading it is doing a good job?
I think. Yeah, yes, obviously. And the trouble is, somebody needs to get a memo to Theresa May saying, you're a hard-working so-and-so, but I'm sorry, you're not. And this. I'm sure she probably thought, let's break from the old stereotype. The Conservatives. She was probably thinking, I'm even strong enough to actually criticise the Conservative Party, and she got that hopelessly wrong with this her policies on elderly care and.
It didn't work, did it? No, I know. So Tim, I mean, albeit not from a Conservative voter, but for her as leader, what end of term mark would you give her out of 10?
About a 2, I think.
About a 2. All right, Tim from Chesterfield. That's how Tim feels. Credit where credit is due. May has a lot of stayability, considering the stress and pressure she has had to deal with, says Paul on Twitter. At 48, Mogg already too old for leader. Wow. Needs to be somebody who is 10 years younger, is what I get on Twitter. Well, if 48 is too old to be leader, there's something gone very wrong in the world, it seems to me. Ruth Davidson for me, says another. Mrs May has had Sturgeon, the EU, Remainers, terrorists, and Momentum all on her plate. Empathy, please, says Tony. So there are people who feel genuinely sorry for what Mrs May has had to go through over the course of the last few months. Peter says, Jacob Rees-Mogg, God only knows why people idolise him. Man of the people? ? Well, so we're now getting slightly both sides of this argument. Aaron in Sevenoaks, how is Mrs May doing in your view? In Sevenoaks, a Tory stronghold.
No, a disaster. You had Heseltine on, or you didn't, but he was on LBC, and not so long about a couple of days ago, I think.
Yeah.
And he was saying, well, you know, if she plays her cards right, Mrs May plays her cards, she could be there for a very long time. Well, it suits him, and it suits the Remainers to keep this Prime Minister in power, because all it's doing is perpetuating disunity, perpetuating chaos.
Yes.
And that's what what that does, that actually weakens the United Kingdom against the EU. We a window of opportunity. Forget what people say. There is a window of opportunity here to get rid of this Prime Minister, and nothing's going to happen this side of the German elections. You've got the Tory party conference coming up. I can't believe, as I'm standing here now, that Graham Brady hasn't got the required amount of MPs to affect the challenge. I just cannot believe it. Now, if they're making all the wrong moves,
What they're scared of, Aaron, they're scared that if they have a big war inside the Conservative Party and that fault line that has been there in the Tory party for 50 years on attitudes towards the European project emerge, that it could finish up with a general election and Corbyn as Prime Minister. That is what they're scared of.
He won't get in, Nigel. He won't get in because he's peaked. I mean, they're talking about the young and Corbyn monopolising the youth. What they need is some good policies that will. I mean, there was a friend of mine whose son is, I think, he's 17 now. He's a Tory, but will be a Tory voter. And his view is, why should I have? He's just done an apprenticeship.
Yeah.
Why should I complete my apprenticeship and pay for people who attending university doing half, STEM subjects.
No, I understand that. I mean, Aaron, you think May's hopeless. You think it suits the Remainers like Heseltine to keep her there. If she goes, who should replace her?
Well, you had him on for the first 15 minutes. You need somebody.
How long have you been a fan of Jacob Rees-Mogg? I mean, it seems to me that until 2 weeks ago, very few people were supporting Jacob. Suddenly, he has a baby, calls it Sixtus, appears on Question Time and does well, and he's now a hero.
No, I've always liked him. He's got. You need someone with the gravitas and the intellect, and you need someone who's got the intellectual gravitas to lead the party, who's charismatic, which he certainly is, which is one of the criteria for leadership.
Fine. OK, Aaron, I thank you. And the last call goes to Elliot. Elliot, we haven't got long. What have you got to say about May or indeed Jacob Rees-Mogg?
Jacob Rees-Mogg, fantastic man, fantastic parliamentarian, not suitable for leader.
Not suitable? Why?
No. Well, I'm reading off a website called They Work For You at the minute.
Yeah, I know it, yeah.
Well, consistently voted against gay rights, consistently voted against allowing marriage between the two people of the same sex, generally voted against laws to promote equality and human rights, consistently voted against investigations into the Iraq War, etc. The list goes on. These aren't things that are going to push the country forward. I was an ardent Remainer, but we don't get around to. We lost, and these aren't things that are going to.
Well, Rees-Mogg
Brexit.
Rees-Mogg is a very strong Roman Catholic. Elliot, thank you. Elliot, adding a note there. You know, a lot of you were fanatical about Rees-Mogg. All I can say as a final thought is I still think the Prime Minister is in big trouble, and as far as Rees-Mogg is concerned, something quite extraordinary is happening out there. And if you want to listen again to the interview with Jacob Rees-Mogg, then go to the LBC Facebook page where you can watch the whole show again in full. You've been listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC.